So happy Friday, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining. And for those of you who are catching up online, extra special welcome. I know making it to Friday afternoon at 4:30 is not always, or if it is even Friday 4:30 for you, wherever you are in the world, not always an easy thing to do. So great to have you with us either now or later. I wanted to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I totally tripped over my tongue there, um, and their elders, past and present, for the work that they've done to maintain this beautiful country that we're on. So, by all means, wherever you are in the world, have a moment to think about who has cared for the country that you're on. And I think the thing that's particularly relevant to me or pertinent to me in the context of what we're going to talk about today is the idea of setting up cultures of well-being and the observation that although what we've been doing over the course of the festival has been slicing and dicing a little bit, we're very good in Western science at diving into the detail, pulling it apart, all the little component parts and understanding each component part in its own right. And when you start putting it back together again, you start realizing how important the kind of cultural underpinning of all of that is, which obviously is something that Indigenous knowledge systems have known since the very, very beginning. And we're only just kind of swinging back around to. So big acknowledgement there. So, less willpower, more system has been the theme of this week, and I'm super excited to introduce everybody to Nicole Turnbull, who is my soul sister, if you like, in systems thinking around well-being. So, what are we doing? What is the point of today's session? For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to join us up until now, our observation through working with people on flipping burnout into flourishing is one of the things that is especially difficult for people to do is to just kind of pause, take stock, and reflect on what's working, what's not working, and intentionally make change. And there's this beautiful quote from a summit that I went to a few weeks ago now, from Andrea Clark, which is without reflection, there's no growth. So taking that time is hard. It becomes easier if we do it together. That's the point of these Friday afternoon sessions. So welcome again. We're going to chat with Nick, and then we're going to take 15 minutes or so just to try and pull it all together for ourselves, have that opportunity to reflect. So, the very fabulous Nicole Turnbull, who I think I described in this week's email as a systems designer. She's that amongst many, many things. She's got decades of experience working across health and safety regulators, which makes her a subject matter expert, but she's also got lived experience of what happens in workplaces when they're unsafe. So I think she's got a unique observation, unique perspective, and a unique set of skills to help us all think constructively about the way that systems fit together for ourselves in our workplaces and elsewhere, both from an individual perspective, but also from that bigger picture perspective as leaders, as we're going out into the world or into our families. How do we actually make this work so it's a little bit easier for everybody? So, Nick, did I cover everything?
Maybe.
Well, I wondered if we could start with your story. So, I think you've got a really, as I said, I think you've got a really interesting perspective because you've got a very a unique set of experiences to draw from. So, I wonder if you could just tell us maybe about the penny drop moment for you, or the series of penny drop moments where you kind of realized that the systems piece of the picture or the puzzle was actually the missing part.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for that lovely intro, Helen. And it's always wonderful chatting with you. I love that you are totally focused on one of the biggest issues that we have. So thank you for doing what you do. And Naveen. So my background is I've got 20 years experience in comms and engagement and 15 in work health and safety and workers' comp, 10 of those working for both safety regulators in New South Wales, the Workers' Comp Insurer, and the Independent Review Office, where I witnessed and experienced all of the psychosocial hazards in the book. I did everything by the book, but the book didn't help. And I wish it was a penny drop moment. But it was more like a ton of bricks or a build up of ignoring the little signs, ignoring my body, ignoring my health and well-being. I completely burnt out while I was at one of those agencies, and it was about 12 months of me working 12 hours a day, most weekends, no lunch breaks, and just trying to keep on top of that hill. I was like, no, no, as soon as I get over this hump, then I'll have a break. As soon as I do this, then there'll be time for rest. There'll be time for celebration. There'll be time for something else other than working. And that just never happened. And the reason it went for so long is because I absolutely loved what I did. I loved where I was working. Everything kind of came together after a number of different things. And I was supporting seriously injured people. I was supporting people who were in wheelchairs, who didn't have the use of their bowel, who had such incredible stories and were struggling. And what I was able to do was help them. I was able to give them hope. I was able to design programs that made their life easier, and that just kept me going. Um, but that never-ending hump ended in an instance where there was a situation with a team member who was basically drilling holes in the boat while I was rowing, and I remember the room that I was in where I was unsupported, and I just gave up. I gave up fighting. I gave up trying to push through everything. I gave up trying to carry the weight of my role and the team and everything that the vision I could see was incredible. And I went, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. The support is gone. And just a side note, my role was split into three when I left this organization. So it was ridiculous. But I was in that room and I remember the feeling. I realized that nothing I did, at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much I did, the organization was always going to take the path of least resistance, not the right one, the one that was easier for them right now. And that was a bit devastating, a bit soul destroying. And my body and my brain just wasn't anything big, it wasn't anything huge, but I felt this complete let go. And it was like my body was telling me, I told you so. This was coming, and now it's here. And it took me about 5 months to recover. I was so overstimulated because I was getting 200 emails a day. I was doing really stupid things. And if you're doing any of these, stop doing these right now. I would roll over in the morning and look at my work phone and start looking at my emails in bed. The only reason I think I stayed up for so long was because my husband would make dinner. I wouldn't eat lunch because just wasn't enough time. But he would make me a smoothie in the morning. He would make sure that I kept going. Like he did all of the washing, all the cooking. It's just incredible. Uh, but maybe he shouldn't have done that because I probably would have broken before that. But I ended up getting professional help, and I was so overstimulated that I remember just putting the mattress in the lounge room and putting the TV on Netflix, which was like just a fireplace with just like humming music. This is all I need for about a month. So, and when I got professional help, we went through the pie, we did all the thing, and my pie was like 95% work. And I just allowed it to creep up and continue to take over my life because I really did. I loved what I did. And I do wish that it was a penny drop moment, but that's why I do what I do today because this is not, it's not just me. I talk to people all the time who are on the way there or are almost there too. So my goal is to make sure that you don't do silly things like I did so that you can,
It's
yeah.
such a vivid story, Nick. Thank you. I always appreciate when you're so open about what happened for you, what the circumstances were, and what actually happened, like the detail of what happened, because those stories, I think there's still a lot of shame around burnout. So it's super, super helpful to hear people talk about it in that kind of detail. And the other thing that I love about it is it just busts a bunch of myths about what burnout's all about, right? Like, quite often you'll get the silver bullet or just do work that's meaningful. Well, super meaningful, right? Like, it's not like you didn't care deeply about it. In fact, that's part of what drove you towards burnout. Not lacking in resilience, right? Pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until you hit the wall. So I think just kudos again for being willing to share that story. And I think it's a great kind of, this is the darkest moment kind of part of the story. And then the part where you're now working on systems and actively designing systems that make it much harder for people to go down that path. So maybe, I talk about systems design like, it makes sense. It sounds kind of fancy, right? So
Oh,
what is it? What is it? What is a systems designer? What do you do?
um, I'd never actually thought of myself as a system designer until you shared that.
But you
Did
so
you
are.
did you want to stop sharing
Mm,
the slide so we can see each other's
yes.
full
Yeah.
faces?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Then I can, yeah, put it on the
Yeah. Yeah.
gallery,
No,
see
that's much better.
faces. Um, it's really how things work, and it's not how it says it works. Like I've been in government, right? So they have a lot of systems, they have a lot of policies, they've got a lot of procedures, but what actually happens is what the system really is. And look, I love how you broke it down in, the systems at the individual level, systems at the team level, systems at the organizational level, because we really need to be looking at things that way. And I found that when it comes to, so my whole being is about psychosocial safety and the code of practice and mental health and well-being. And I looked at it and I go, well, does this really make sense?
Yeah.
Like, how are people supposed to know what to do if we can't do it in the regulators? How are we supposed to know what to do? And I look at the code in exactly that way. So with systems, when it comes to especially organizational systems, are quite confusing. So we need to break it down into simplification. And I have the three pillars model. So it's organizational systems, leadership practices, and individual behaviors. And they're the responsibility levels. And we either can create them or reduce them at the organizational level, the leaders level, or the individual. And when it comes to the individual level, it's about what can I control? I can control my actions and behaviors and also be really clear about what's expected of me. And if I don't have that clarity, asking that, what my boundaries are. I
Yeah.
learned that word because I didn't have them. And also what levels of support you can access to at that individual level. And then when you go to the team, it's about, how decisions are made, how conflicts handled, how roles interact, but also the culture of your team. I've worked in those agencies and other organizations where you can have two teams sitting next to each other and they behave completely differently. And one of them, at one of those agencies that I mentioned, the executive director would come in, you would say good morning, and he would grunt at you. And that was the best part of the day from him. So the flow-on effect from that in his team was not great.
Yeah.
And the culture that I was able to create in my team, because when I came on board, people were trying to jump off into another team because there was someone in the role who was very command and control. They were very insecure. They were very, you need to do what I say. And they were taking their work because of many reasons and putting their name on it. So I came in and just went, look, I see that you're in this position. I know that your role is here. Where would you like to be? If it's somewhere else, how can I help you get there? Like, I am totally open to it. I see that your skill set is in this. What do you love doing? What do you not like doing? What would you like to do? If you had a magic wand, what would you do here today? And they just looked at me and went, oh my gosh, you spoke to me like a person. You, you asked what I want to do. So they all, started to jump back in. Um, but it's that culture of, are you leaving work on time or are you there until 7 o'clock? Do you not take lunch breaks? Do you not come out of your office if you have an office? I kind of love an office because open plan is very distracting. But do you come and check in on people? Do you say good morning? Do you have, regular one-on-ones? Do you have meeting-free Fridays, for example? That was a good one for me because you've had such a big week and you want to have Friday either to do work or to have a half day or to catch up on things, or Fridays are supposed to be a yay day. So if you've got, back-to-back meetings, that's just not fun. So, and it's even things like, are you emailing people late at night? And that's not a problem if you work different hours, but letting people know that that's it too. So saying, all right, well, I don't work until lunchtime. So they know that you're actually, creating that culture of work around what works for you, if that's something that you can do. Obviously, if you work at a retail company, you need to work at the hours that it's open and the hours that your shifts are. But if you've got that flexibility, use it. And then when it comes to the organizational level, it's all of the things. So the policies process, the culture at the bigger level, and it's the psychosocial safety, right? It's the culture, it's the environment. It's, do you know what you're walking into? When you walked into that agency I was telling you about, you knew that you didn't go into a certain part of a certain level because there was always yelling, there was always crankiness, there was always huffing. And then it's about designing that work with intent, not going to default, because we always do what we've always done. And I'm very much about, if the system's broken, how can we either change it or fix it? And if we can't, how can we stay away from it? How can we not get into the system? And like I'm talking about, for example, the workers' comp system, or the system that feeds you into a process that is going to have a bad outcome. How can you make it more positive, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So prevention rather than
Yeah,
the very convoluted, very bureaucratic, and not very effective
that's
process that comes if, yeah, that's right. I love that distinction between the what's written in policies and what's actually happening at ground level, and the interplay between what's happening at ground level and your own agency to shift it. Because I think people tend to look at the environment around them and say, I can't influence, like, this is just the way it's done. I can't influence that. So that kind of courage to kind of step up, and I know courage is a big word of yours, that courage to step up and say, that's not okay. Like,
yeah,
it's just not. This
yeah.
is what I need. And this is how I think we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to make sure that people have time to ask you questions. So I'm just going to open to the floor. If people have got questions for Nick, please jump in.
I could talk forever and a day too.
That's what we
Nick,
love
I'd,
about
I'd
you.
be I'd be really interested to sort of understand. Obviously, there's three very distinct levels, and as you said, your team was functioning, other teams weren't functioning.
Yeah.
Um, it- what's best practice about stitching those three levels together, where people feel motivated and accountable as individuals within teams, where leaders create the right environment within sort of a broader organizational culture. How do you stitch all of that together? Maybe if you're, so I'm in the sandwich, I'm the meat in the sandwich. I'm a team leader. Shah, the gorgeous Shah over there, she's our individual contributor in our team, and we live within sort of a very interesting startup environment in our team. And
Mm.
it's really keen to, like, if I'm an individual contributor, controlling what's within my control,
Mm.
how do I influence up or
And sometimes it's really tough. Sometimes, like, there was no way I could influence that other team. I tried to through my executive director, but they didn't want a bar of it. So it's working out what you can control and getting the exec on board and buy-in and understanding what the real issues are and wanting to actually work for them is so important. Um, so looking at things like the benefits of doing the right thing, the risks of doing the wrong thing, and coming to people with a solution. So we often think that we can't make change, and really there's so much change we can make. Often it's about saying, right, here's the challenge I see. Here's the next steps or the outcome that we want to achieve, and here's the way that I think we can get there. If you can come to people with here's a step-by-step solution, or here's an idea on how to do that, and you can make their life easier, then they will more likely say yes than going, oh gosh, that's too big of a problem. Another really good tip is to give options. So if you say, right, here's the challenge, here's where we need to go, definitely focus on the outcome you want and give them a couple of options, two or three, not too much because it overwhelms them. But if you say we can go this way or that way, that's the choice they're making, not having one and doing a yes or no. So, coming to them with a couple of solutions and ways that you think it could work. And I also found as well that you kind of need to start from, you can either start from the org, the system and the executive, or you can start from the bottom. And when it comes to behaviors like, harmful behaviors like conflict, bullying, harassment, all that sort of stuff, we often forget that we're adults and we're responsible for our actions and behaviors. And I've got a training program called Minimizing Harmful Behaviors, where I bring all of the harmful behaviors together: sexual harassment, discrimination, bullying, conflict, incivility, all of that sort of stuff. And we don't go through the legislation, we don't go through the definitions, we do it at a high level, but it's all about the tools that you need to identify it so that you can see it in yourself. And then the ability to de-escalate it. So it's that accountability at the individual level that then allows you to be able to, as a leader, um, manage behaviors more appropriately and start with the leadership team as well, because we get so busy, we have so much to do, and that's when we're short. That's when we're not thinking about the system improvements, or we're not thinking about where we need to go or what the challenges are. We're just trying to get through the grind. And unfortunately for strategy, that just kills it. So being able to take some time out, take some step back and go, right, this is who I am and what I can control and how can we move forward together as an organization. And yeah, if you can give them a couple of options, make their life easier, then they'll be more likely to go down a path and start that rather than just saying, oh, it's too hard or this is what we've already done. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I actually really I love the lens of what's the solution we're trying to focus on, and then how do we get there? And there's several roads, but like
Yeah.
always focusing on the end result, I think sort of
Yeah.
that North Star. Yeah, I love it. Love it.
Because it's hard to argue with that. It's hard to argue with, well, this is where we want to be. And then they're focusing on that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And this particular behavior is not making that easy to achieve. In fact, you're making it harder for us to get where we're going. Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome. Other questions for Nick? I wonder, in your recovery process, Nick, through that 5 months and your kind of realization that you needed to remove some of the barriers to your own taking care of yourself, your own ability to do really intense work consistently and sustainably. What have you put in place in the process of your work to make sure, because you're still doing high intensity work, right? You're still exposed to some really sticky behavior. So what are you doing for yourself now that we could learn from?
Look, and I am not perfect. Uh,
So we're not looking for
no.
perfection, just collecting examples.
And the biggest challenge for me is I get so excited about what I do. So I wake up with energy. I wake up when the sun gets up, and I've got all of the things in my head, and I go down the track of, developing these things and working with people. And um, a couple of things that really helped is having an accountability buddy. If you can have someone that says, "Hey, how are you? What's going on? I see you're working too much. You're not taking time to have lunch." I um, I've got a message from Caroline because Caroline Howe and I have been working together. And I said to her the other day, I said, I feel like I'm dropping balls. I feel like I'm, missing all of these things. I'm doing all of this stuff and it's not effective. And she sends me this message about reduced professional efficiency. You're burning out and you need time off. And then she says, a persistent sense of being ineffective at work accompanied by feelings of failure or incompetence. And she sent me all this stuff. And then she starts talking about micro and meso and macro breaks have been found to be effective. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just that logic brought me back to, right, it's okay. Um, and I found too asking different questions. So instead of saying, how much more work can I get done by, working on the weekends and working through lunch? It's like, will the world fall over if I don't do that? And putting in a reward system that rewards for taking breaks, not rewarding for doing more work. And also, like Caroline's great at it because she loves the research and all that sort of stuff. We know that we are more effective when we have breaks. We know that we get more done when we have breaks, but we forget to do that.
Yeah.
And the other questions I ask myself are things like, well, what can I control? And will this matter in 5 years' time? Is it worth worrying about? And does it give me joy? That was a big one because I was doing a lot of things, and this is outside of work too. I was hanging out with people who were quite negative. I was doing a lot of things that just didn't light me up. I'm like, why are we doing this? And just removing those things to make way for more things that make you smile, that light you up. Like we, there's not enough time in the day to not have or in your life to not have a great time. So, Erica.
How do you do that? How do you get out of your own way? Because it's like, you know that you've got to do it, but there's work to be done and it's got to get done and people are relying on me, right? So maybe it's a bit of an ego as well.
Yeah.
It's unconsciously, what is it? Unconsciously incompetent ego. Like how do you break the circuit? How do you go? I mean, you said, is it going to fall apart if I
Yeah,
don't? Nothing ever falls apart. We know that
exactly.
on a conceptual level, but like literally, how do we get out of our own way?
And it depends on what works for you. So for Caroline, knowing the data and the research, like that is her. For me, I get distracted and I get into the flow. So having the system, like for example, have lunch outside with someone else and build relationships with people in your team and outside your team. Even if you're working virtually, get on the phone and do like a walking lunch. Do it for you, but also do it for someone else. And then if we're letting someone else down, we won't do it. Schedule things over the weekend that are fun too. Or if you get into a habit of working to 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 at night, block out time with people that you love doing and go, right, I can't do that because I've got to do something more fun. Reward yourself with something more fun. Um, and I find the time that I get the best ideas and the most ideas is when I'm driving. So when you're away from the screen, away from the doing, and you could even, as a team, do like a scoring system where at the end of the month, if you have like a checklist to say, well, who had the most amount of breaks, if you want to be competitive, who had lunch every day, who woke up and did, whatever they wanted to do, whether it's nighttime yoga or reading in the morning or doing something else, have a point system at the end of the month, they get a something. Like figure out what your love language is, do the 5 love languages. And do like
Add
10.
it to your OKRs, Erica. Front and center.
I've literally been working on those today. Could you imagine
Right.
my boss going, we've got implement a point system for who had the most fun?
Well, I think if you could demonstrate that you end up with better retention over time, then that's a good KR to have. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't reward
Nice.
ourselves enough. So yeah. Um, and that is it the Komodo, whatever that is.
That one.
Yeah. There's a few different things. Just find out what works to you for you, but doing it together is way easier than trying to do it by yourself. Mm.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I love that you and Charlotte and other members. There's another Erica who's joined us. Hello, the other Erica, that you're joining as a group because you're all speaking the same language then, right? Hey, Nick, thank you so much for sharing, as always. I am going to flash up your contact details again in case people want to connect with you, obviously on LinkedIn. I'm realizing that probably there we go, the little thumbnails are probably in the way for people. So please do, where it's useful, connect with Nick, or it's always going to be useful. So just connect with Nick. And we will now obviously just give people a minute to hop out if you don't want to stick around for the reflection portion of our call today. Otherwise, we're going to jump into the canvas for our reflection portion, which is this one. So for those of you who were not in the kickoff workshop in the first week of our Festival of Flourishing, this is a canvas we've been working with as a reflection prompt. And I think Naveen has just popped a link to that canvas into the chat. So if you want to use this for yourselves, obviously feel free. So what we've just been talking about are these triangles off to the side. So things that pull in the wrong direction, I think Nick has just given us a bunch of really lovely examples of. So things like I've got to finish this before I take a break is a wonderful example of self-talk that just makes it really, really hard to manage stress recovery in a really consistent, sustainable way. So if you're always pulling towards stress, if that self-talk is always pulling towards stress, then that's going to be hard. So one opportunity that she has just mentioned is to kind of talk back to that particular bit of unhelpful self-talk and maybe just put in some structures over on the right-hand side, like agreeing an accountability buddy who you're going to go for a walking meeting with. Over on the right hand side, just make it easier on yourself. So those are a couple of examples. I think we've had a ton of them throughout. So it might be worth now, I will put on some music, just taking 5 minutes to think about what's happened during the week that's pulled you in the wrong direction, that's pulled you back into that bad stress, bad recovery kind of space, and also what's pulled you in the right direction. So what do you want to turn the volume down on the left-hand side? What do you want to amplify on the right-hand side? So I will put some thinking music on and give you 5, and then we'll come together and have a chat, see what people discovered. How did we go? Anyone notice something they feel like sharing?
I think this is the first week I've done it properly, where I actually got what I was trying to do in the reflection, which was really good.
It's kind of why we've dragged it out over the course of October. This is not an easy skill. So coming back to it at the end of every week, like it's just taken me a really long time, Erica, I have to say. So you're much faster than me. What did you notice?
Well, I started putting some things into the quadrant, right? And then I was like, hold on, let's just look again. Anxious, drained, excited, calm. Like, okay, so those are very tangible emotions that I can put towards activities of the week. But then it's like juice not worth the squeeze, right? So that's actually not things that I had to do this week that drained me. That's actually stuff I need to really eliminate. And when I thought about that, I thought the most I can do about that at the moment, right? Because obviously I don't think I'm quite self-aware enough, if I'm honest, is actually I know the right questions to start asking myself next week about this can be eliminated. Like this has got to be gone. This is adding no value, not to me, and then there's anxiety out the door. So I thought that was interesting, right? Because I literally reflecting the week, I was like, I actually can't identify anything in the week past that fits into that quadrant, but I know it's there somewhere. But just to be able to ask those questions and go, right, I'm going to go into next week just thinking about that. So yeah, it was really
Awesome.
good.
Excellent. Yeah, one of the really nice things about the reflection exercise is not just the process itself, which is valuable. It also tunes you into what to be paying attention to because you want to be able to reflect on it at the end of the week. So it's got this kind of parallel value, I find. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything that they have noticed in doing that exercise?
As soon as you put that music on, my body was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
And that's the type of music I listen to when you need to just bring everything down. And I have like an awesome 80s playlist when you need to bring things up.
Yeah.
So music is a big one that you can use um, in all of those Brian Eno music reports. Really?
Yeah.
You know what?
Yep.
It has a big effect. And heat as well. We get cranky when we're hot.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh.
that's a great call out, Nick. Your just physical environment can make such a big difference. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what I noted down on the left was just this kind of lingering temptation to compare pace, compare achievement to, wherever you look in the world, particularly in social media, someone's doing something better than you, or someone seems to be more successful than you. And I do notice that I still get sucked into that comparison. Like it's just, it drives all the wrong behaviors for all the wrong motivations. So I like to just, pause and notice that when it's happening. And the thing that I noticed, and it was really related to what Nick was just saying before, is when you're picking things that pull in the right direction that just feel good in and of themselves, they're just so much easier. So things that pull in the right direction are things that I just enjoy doing that don't feel like an extra chore in the week. Like, for example, going bouldering with my daughter this morning was super fun. So everyone, thank you so much for joining. We are right at 5:15. We didn't quite get to the final exercise. Sorry, team. I know it's fun to throw things on the compost pile and close the curtains and celebrate the wins, but I feel like the big win for this week for me is just seeing all your lovely faces. So I'll put that on the trophy shelf. Thanks for joining, and hopefully see you all next week for the final week of the Festival of Flourishing. Enjoy your weekends. See you.